Well, Michael, much like the Georgia State House of Representatives, the Disinformed podcast cannot seem to make up its mind as to who all should be in the podcast episodes here. I see last week I was missing, and this week we've changed affiliations again here, and now Shane's gone, and it's just you and I.
That's very true. I mean, we vote people out, we vote people in, if you just look at the whole breadth of our podcast, we're a revolving door of cast members, so it's par for the course.
Yeah, well, that's why I think a while back there I said at the end of this year or so I could envision an in memoriam, black and white slideshow there of previous hosts and whatnot. So I saw
technically they didn't die. They're just dead to us.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kidding. We love our former hosts. All of them.
That's right.
Exactly.
The hostess with the mostess. So I saw the look of confusion in your eyes there when I said the Georgia State House of Representatives. Are you not up to speed on the latest political news?
Is this actually latest, or did this happen a couple months ago? Because if it's latest and greatest, then I have no idea what's going on.
No, it's just happened, I think, a couple days ago here. So a state representative who was formerly with the Democratic Party is announced that she is switching affiliations and becoming a Republican. Yeah, which always fascinates me. Her name is something like Misha Maynor or something like that. So she's first of all, in Georgia, she's an African-American woman switching affiliations to Republican, and her county, I think, where she represents, Biden won that with like 70% of the vote. So, yeah. So
wow, that must have been a lot of money to be bought out like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's like so fascinating because, this in 2023, the Republican Party doesn't scream like the party of African-American females in particular.
Fair.
So to have, and especially when you're representing an area that was won by the current president with almost 3/4 of the vote, kind of surprising you jump ship and switch teams.
See, this is a sore subject for me because I reside in the area that we, considering myself as well, elected Kyrsten Sinema to the Senate. And to be fair, to give a little bit of background Arizona history, she was affiliated with the Green Party, if I recall correctly. And if not, we're a disinformed podcast, so take it as you will. But if I recall correctly, she would protest in black bloc, actually show up to protest, ready to throw down and stuff like that. So she was fairly progressive. And then as soon as she was elected to a place where she can start accepting money, oh, yeah, all that went out the window. She's now more of a centrist, an independent. And, there's probably some people that would say, well, she was always like that. Either that, but people elected her because she was in the Democratic Party. Just like this person from the Georgia, state representatives or the Georgia State Senate. She was elected because she was with that party. She had that party affiliation. And to switch like that, I feel should immediately go into some sort of vote. Do you want to keep this person? Because once we learned Kyrsten Sinema for what she actually was, someone that just really likes fancy spa dates, going on marathons, and just yelling at her aides to spend more money or something dumb like that. I didn't want her in. I wanted someone to actually help the Democratic Party, not to just sit around and be like, well, I don't know if this is a good idea.
She's actually, I was going to reference her because that's why I was curious about your opinion on this, because I knew that it would be a bit of a sore subject there, since you've got some firsthand experience at it. This sort of thing always fascinates me because this woman in Georgia, for instance, she won her primaries. She ran unopposed, right? Because you're the Democrat already there, the incumbent.
Yeah, exactly.
So you win your last two primaries unopposed. You win the election with 65, 70% of the vote because you're representing a Democratic stronghold. And to your point, people might not even necessarily be super familiar with her. They just see the D by her name and they're like, that's the party that supports things that I'm after and, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so they vote for her. And that's what annoys me with this sort of stuff, and it's just a failing of the American political system in that the people have elected a Democrat to represent them and support a Democratic agenda in that area, and now because one individual who's supposed to represent her people, it's literally the House of Representatives, is like, I don't feel like I want to do that anymore. I don't know the specifics, no slander, but I would assume that some money must have been involved. There must have been some particularly good reason.
I mean, you're a politician. That's like par for the course. Isn't that in the job description? Like, must accept a bunch of money from random people. Well, people that give the most money. That's that sort of thing. And you're right. You're definitely right. Like, if we were electing someone based off of them, instead of, they have the D. Poor choice of words. They have the D next to their name, or they have the R next to their name, or, some sort of third party, I guess, for the people that are very niche and like to support the Green Party or the other 400 some odd parties that actually technically exist within the American system, but have like maybe a couple thousand people at most. But yeah, like when they saw, one person unopposed, she's a Democrat, I'm voting for her. I bet you a good chunk of her constituents didn't even bother looking at her credentials.
Well, yeah, but she represents Atlanta, so I'm sure that, I'm sure that they were just like Democratic,
Never mind. I almost started talking things about Cop City that I have no business talking about because I am not from that area, nor am I even close to being that area. But yeah, no, because I'll definitely admit that has happened to me, especially for a lot more local things to vote for. Like, what was the corny ass phrase that I always vote blue no matter who? That kind of thing that a lot of liberals throw out there is like, we got to save everything about we got to save democracy. Vote for the Democrats. Don't look at who they are. Just they have a D next to their name. They'll help you out. I promise. And so it's very frustrating, and it explains why not a lot of people care to vote. Because like, no matter who we vote, people are just going to be corrupted by the system because it's all about giving that money, especially after something like Citizens United. But this technically isn't a political podcast. We kind of get on here on occasion to rant about some things politically, but we're supposed to be funny. It's not my strong point. I'll admit I'm not funny at all, but
I mean, in some ways I think we're talking about the greatest joke that there is.
that was good. That was good. 10 out of 10. A real banger of a joke right there. The American political system.
This stuff just gets under my skin so much just because it's so hypocritical, right? For starters, if nothing else, I would expect somebody to do something. Again, I don't agree with this either, but if nothing else, at least go independent, right? Because then you can argue, I don't fully find myself in alignment with the Democratic Party or whatever, right? But to just completely switch teams, it's like, that's literally the 180 of the people that voted for you. And then the other thing that really annoys me, especially with stuff like this, when it's like, 2-year election terms, right? I'm like, you just ran last year and won. Stick with what the people elected you for. And then in the next election, say, you know what? I'm changing teams. I'm going to run for Republican, and then see if the people follow you. But that they won't. So you do it midterm so you can cash in, make the money and whatnot. Because if anybody had any real self-respect and actually cared about the process, then exactly. Then they would either wait until the next election and say, hey guys, I'm now running as a Republican. I hope you'll still support me, etc. Or if they really feel like this is a moral issue, which is I think what she referenced it being for her, that this was a moral issue. If she really feels that way, then she would step down and try to push for a special election, in the midterm here, and then she could run as a Republican and say, now she can go in with the votes if she was reelected, right? So this kind of stuff just annoys me because it's we're just at the whims of people that ultimately are just going to be selfish and look after themselves and their own bank check, or their bank accounts.
It's almost like we shouldn't be relying on hierarchies to dictate our lives. But, that's me being a little too spicy for the internet at the moment. I don't want the feds coming knocking on my door. But yeah, no, when we rely on people that have faults and are easily corruptible to lead us, especially people that we don't know on a personal level, it becomes a little difficult. And when they do whatever they feel is necessary, which is usually not in our best interest, usually being never in our best interest, we usually get, upset because it's like, hey, I elected you for a specific reason, or I elected you because I thought you were the best choice. Why are you going against my wishes? And it's because we're not electing a set of ideals. We're electing a person that is easily corruptible. And I say easily as in very easily corruptible, because money is, money talks. Throw in whatever sort of idiom you want about money. So it becomes difficult. It becomes very difficult to try and be like, well, this person was a paragon of virtue, and you're right. It's a whole stupid system, but I'm going to stop myself from getting spicy because
we can't. On the bright side, we can't be too hypocritical here or cast too many judgments, because much like the representative here from the great state of Georgia, we here at the Disinformed podcast also just do whatever we want, because what we typically do at the Disinformed podcast is tell tall tales to one another.
Ooh, no, keep going. I wasn't going to say anything. No, you found the bit. You found the rope. You found the tether. Pull us back in. Pull us back in.
I was just going to say, we typically tell tall tales to one another. Mostly true, but sprinkling in those little, lies here and there. And we rely on our co-host and you, the listener, to try to ferret out those lies. And as Shane is so fond of saying, but don't worry, listeners, we leave you with a little denouement at the end, in which we clear it up and leave you, the listener, with all the facts and truths there, so that if any of the lies squeaked by you as you were listening, you get caught up at the end. However, much like the representative from Georgia there, we've just flipped the script and we're going to do whatever we want to do. So tonight, we do not have, and I know this is going to disappoint so many listeners, the thrilling conclusion to the Smedley Butler case. You will have to wait on the edge of your seat in anticipation.
I'm not doing that bit anymore. I was gonna say we're leading on, we're edging, if you will, edging for that thrilling climax. And we do that from time to time. I know I've definitely been guilty to that several times. Synanon is at least one that I can think of off the top of my head, where I was like, I can't finish this. Someone else help prolong the misery, if you will. So yeah, no, it's always fun doing some free form on occasion, talk about what's on our mind, and I can tell you what's on my mind.
Ooh.
A lot of sweat. Just so, to fill in all the listeners here, and I'm not raising my arms too much because no one needs to see those sweat stains, even though this is primarily a audio medium. I live in New Mexico for the time being, and we are finally part of this heat dome that's stretching coast to coast, almost like Space Ghost for all those millennials out there. And I have to say, it sucks not having air conditioning or a fan. We finally hit that triple digit life that I've grown so accustomed to from my home state of Arizona. And let me say that it should be against the Geneva Convention, or should be part of the Geneva Convention, if you will, to be this hot in a climate, to have a climate this hot and to not have at least some sort of mitigation for heat, because it is disgusting. I can't sleep except for swimming in a pool of my own sweat, and it is absolutely repulsive. And trust me, I know it was repulsive for all of you to hear it. Trust me, it is worse every time I wake up.
Yeah, I can, despite your valiant efforts to try and hide it, you can definitely see it every time you raise your arm there, the hints of it, and you even have little random spots there where it's clear you're
oh yeah,
you're feeling a little moist.
Most times on my drive home from work, I will get out of the car, go to the bathroom, and I'll just have a nice seatbelt sweat stain, just perfectly, almost like it was branded on my shirt. I will go out of my way to avoid wearing multiple different colors of shirts, Like, I can't wear a lot of dark colors because the sweat stains will poke through. You can't wear things like gray, even though I am wearing a gray shirt for those who can't see, because it pokes out. It's immediately visible when you are sweating through your shirt. And before, all the people are like, wear an undershirt, wear a pull-on shirt or something that helps soak up, wick the sweat. I tried. I've mentioned this before. I've tried. It doesn't help. It just soaks through. I am a font of sweat, and nothing will cure me of that.
Well, at least you're clearing your stuff out, because God forbid it gets trapped in you. You do not want to go the way of Lisa Marie Presley.
She died by sweating too much?
She didn't die. Well, no. See, you're getting the stuff out through your pores. She died. The cause of death just came out the other day as well, or today, I think, actually.
Oh.
She died from a small bowel obstruction. So.
Oh, never mind. I almost was just like your father, but no. He died on the toilet.
That's right.
He didn't die because of the toilet. Two totally different things.
Well, he was almost also going to die from the small bowel obstruction, but he pushed hard and he rallied the troops.
Hard.
Yeah, that's right. And he managed to unobstruct his small bowels, but unfortunately...
with his dying breath.
That's right.
At least I won't shit myself when I die.
Yeah. So poor Lisa Marie was full of shit right until the end. But
I mean, honestly, I can't really comment on her because I don't know anything about her life other than she was the daughter of Elvis. So,
well, and she was married to the King of Pop.
Oh yeah, there was another fact that I distantly recall, ethers of memory, if you will.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. There are all the little tales and tidbits there. So I've been kind of interested in various pop culture things more so as of late, just because I've been on a real Curb Your Enthusiasm binge watch. I'd never watched it all in its entirety before. I only caught sporadic episodes here and there. Have you ever seen it?
Can you guess based off of my prior experience with things?
So clearly not, but
no.
Yeah. So what's fascinating about it is I identify. If you ever do watch it, it's hilarious. It's honest. It's so worth watching.
No, I've heard.
I identify so much with Larry David. It's this guy gets annoyed by the smallest minutia of life. It's a really fantastic show. He's basically playing a fictionalized version of himself. Larry David is one of the co-creators of Seinfeld. And,
okay.
Yeah, and the character,
I forgot why he was important.
Yeah, and the character of George in Seinfeld is essentially like Larry David. It was his fictionalized version of himself for Seinfeld. And so Curb Your Enthusiasm, I think it started in 99, so right after Seinfeld went off.
Long? It's still airing though, isn't it? Or
Correct.
Did it finally finish?
No, yeah, there's it's still airing. There's another season coming out. There's talks that this might be the last one, but it's also a show that has taken huge breaks.
Yeah, because it's FX, if
HBO.
I recall correctly. HBO, okay.
Yeah.
So they do it whenever they damn well feel like it, which is honestly fine. I feel like I'd rather someone take their time, and if they take multi-years for between seasons, that's all right, as opposed to forcing it, squeezing out on the toilet and maybe having a heart attack while doing so.
Yeah, he gets so
let
obsessed.
It be gentle.
Yeah, Larry David's character, he gets so obsessed with small little things, and then just blows them out of proportion and everything. And I watched that, and in the show, in the universe of the show, he's so irritating to so many people. Just because he focuses on these things and he really just becomes obsessed with them. And every time I'm watching one of these damn episodes, it makes me wonder how I'm perceived in the world, because almost every time as I watch it, I'm like, well, he's fucking right.
He's just saying what we're all thinking. I mean, fuck.
Yeah. The episode I was watching earlier today, for instance, he goes to the washroom and so he goes to lift the toilet seat there so he can, do his business standing. And the toilet seat keeps starting to fall back, right? It's one of those ones that doesn't stay all the way up. It starts to fall back down, and you don't want to have a seat falling midstream, right?
Oh, yeah, because then you're crossing the stream with the seat, and you never want to cross stream with anything because it giant massacres. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm right off the bat, I'm with him. I'm that's annoying. And you see him trying to find a way to do his business without touching the stuff, right? Because he's a bit of a germaphobe there. And I'm like, all right, I'm on board with all this. And then he goes and he talks to, because he was at the Netflix headquarters there trying to pitch a show, and he goes and he talks to like the head honcho there and says, by the way, the seat was broken there, and if you could get somebody to work. And the guy's like, yeah, I'll talk to the maintenance there and I'll get them to fix it. And then, fast forward some time and he's back for another pitch, another meeting, and goes to use the washroom. The thing's still broken. And he's like, I thought you were going to talk to the people. And then it just starts like becoming a big thing because he thinks that the guy's lying. Like, yeah, you said you were going to talk to him, but I don't think you did talk. Why would the maintenance guys lie? And it's just like that kind of shit is the stuff that I would think of. I'd be like, that son of a bitch told me he was going to talk to the person and never did.
How many other lies have I been told by the council?
That's right. I am so impressed with your ability to avoid movies and general pop culture things. Like, it is impressive because it just makes me like, I wonder what you do in your time, and I just picture you like sitting and reading like heavy text and writing things at like a desk with a quill, and I don't know, like I just pick, if you're not like,
what kind of person do you think I am?
Well, somebody that's not quill? Watching movies and listening to music or watching TV. So then I'm like, I just picture you on some sort of pedestal there, some ultimate scholar that isn't, I can't be bothered to kill my brain cells with this trivial knowledge.
I fucking wish. I wish I was that cool. I'm nowhere near that. I'm nowhere near that cool. No, I don't utilize my time well for entertainment, if that makes sense. I usually do a lot of work, as someone that has a million jobs would understand. Whenever I am not doing this, because I do put a lot of time into this podcast. Of course,
that's true.
Don't look at the quality, okay? That's not my fault, even though I am the editor and a host and all that stuff. But I do put time into it. And then I also have several other jobs, like they might come and go depending on the time of year, etc. But so whenever I do have free time, I don't utilize it to its extent, to its fullest, because I usually am brain dead and I like to just zone out. So sometimes we'll go get drinks at a nearby bar, and we'll play board games there. Other times we might play the odd game that we've been playing for a long time, but we never sit down and are like, all right, we got 35 minutes. We can watch an episode of something. Let's go. And I feel like, I know that most people aren't like that, but I always am mystified by how much media people can consume in the same amount of time that they have compared to myself. Because it's not like I'm working 60 hours a week doing stuff. I definitely am not that. Even if you were to total every odd, weird thing I do, I still should have plenty of time for watching what's new on TV or, stuff like that. But I don't. So it is very fascinating that so many people are like, well, I watched the last, season. It came out last week. I watched the whole season of whatever is hip and, hip with the youths or whatever. And I'm like, I haven't watched it at all. And I feel like that's also that's a reflection on myself because apparently I don't plan my entertainment ahead of time. But because even though Shane isn't here, I still feel the need that I have to specify this. I did take that challenge seriously that was made last week, and I actually did watch Renfield that night.
Nice.
Because I'm not going to give up my green chili from Santa Fe.
That's right.
Because, God, it's fucking fantastic.
Did you love it?
Yes. And I knew I would. So I'm not going to do a lot of spoilers for Renfield because, there's not really a lot of spoilers if you think about it. It's Nicolas Cage is Dracula, right? Awkwafina is a cop. I can't remember the main character's name, but he's good. I recognized him from Warm Bodies, to just throw out a wild movie from eons ago. Absolutely loved that movie. It was a bizarre movie. I don't know why I enjoyed it so much, but I loved it. Warm Bodies. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, it's Romeo and Juliet, but with zombies. It's really fascinating. Good. Yeah, but anyway. Absolutely fantastic cast of people. They cast everyone perfectly. I feel like Awkwafina, perfect for her role. I think his name is Nicholas, is the main actor who plays Renfield. Absolutely fantastic, perfect for his role. Nicolas Cage, he's just a perfect man.
Well,
I love him.
yeah, and like we've mentioned before, you can definitely tell when he cares, and he definitely cared about this. He was he was there. He showed up on set that day.
He was not calling it in. The last time I had seen him acting that bombastically was The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which was kind of like the fake approach, a Nicolas Cage approach to a biopic, which had nothing to do with his life at all, but he played himself. And that's all that matters. Also a fantastic movie. But Renfield was Shane put it pretty succinctly, and I agreed with it 110%. It was the perfect amount of camp and gore.
Yeah.
And the goriness of it contributed to the camp, and the campiness of it contributed to the goriness of it. And it was just the perfect combination. And it was something that you didn't really expect to see with its genre. Like, when you hear Dracula, you're either thinking, not necessarily medieval, but like 1800s, Victorian era, like where, Bram Stoker's Dracula actually took place. Or you might be doing something that's more gothic in nature, almost not a cyberpunk, but a steampunk of sorts, but more modern day. Something like Constantine. Even though Constantine, at least the movie, doesn't necessarily feature vampires, it is still in that sort of similar vibe where it is, the seedy underbelly, modern day, where there are these supernatural elements. There could be vampires.
Yeah. No, it did a really good job of like dipping its toe in multiple worlds and having a good balance of everything in order to come out with a great final product. So I'm glad that you were able to see it and get to keep your green chilies going. And your guys', like I said off air, your guys' conversations regarding The Flash was also just great to listen to.
Fair.
I'm so glad that Shane got to see it. I still have not, but at this stage, I've kind of given up the dream on that. I'm just waiting for it to hit the streamer here before I finally get to it. But I also have already had everything like spoiled at this stage because I couldn't wait.
That's fair. You were the one that revealed the Nicolas Cage of it all, if you will.
That I was under the I wasn't sure if it was real or not, and then Shane, of course, now has confirmed that it is. So that's I'm looking forward to seeing it. And then I've since learned that like George Reeves is in it, like the 1940s or 50s Superman. There's a brief like cameo with him in it, and then I think Adam West's Batman is also briefly seen in it.
Pretty much everyone that was dead, who is dead, that couldn't say no, was featured in it in some way, shape, or form. I feel like there's only a few people that were able to that outright said no, they didn't want their a cameo, and I think Christian Bale. I almost said Christopher Bale. I don't know why. But Christian Bale said that he didn't want to. And that was the only one that I knew off the top of my head that did not want that, a cameo of it. I don't know if they asked George Clooney, the best Batman, aside from Adam West in my eyes.
He literally did come back, and it's like not just a CGI version of him, I believe. I believe it's actually the actor.
Clooney?
Yeah. You're not aware he's in it?
No. Yeah. I guess I didn't know that. Well, because like it's the same universe. I guess people could correct me if I'm wrong, but Keaton and Clooney, yeah, exactly. I don't know Batman if that's still true. Continued.
Yeah,
really?
I don't think Clooney's is part of that same universe. I think Kilmer's is. I think Val Kilmer's is the same Batman, or is meant to be the same Batman in the same universe because he just subbed in for what was supposed to be like Michael's third film. But I think George Clooney's, I don't think they said definitively one way or the other, but since everything is just so drastically different, I would imagine not, but I guess it could be. I mean, we're not really seeing any repeat of the bad guys, so it's not like we've recast a bad guy. But yeah, I guess that's fair. I never really gave it thought since I figured that the sequels occurred, one after another. Yeah, they replaced the Batman, which they had already set that standard with Val Kilmer. But like, I figured that bringing, having Clooney in was just, they were replacing the actor, not necessarily the Batman, so to speak. Well, yeah.
So that might have just been an assumption on my part.
Yeah, because like I know I know that Michael Keaton was supposed to come back for the third film, and then obviously there was the change up with Burton and him and whatnot. But so then Kilmer was coming in. So the original idea for this film was, I believe, still put forward with Michael Keaton in mind, right? So I know Kilmer's is like, okay, this is still the continuation of that general story, and it's still kind of like a darker overall movie and stuff, right? It's
more gothic in a way.
So it's still more fitting in alignment with the Burton films, whereas the Clooney film is like such a drastic departure in terms of visual and tone. So that to me, it's like, this doesn't fit in that universe anymore because it's just such a wild shift. It's no longer just a recasting of the actor, but keeping it in the same general tone and vibe. It just looks different, feels different, is different.
Was Batman and Robin, was that still Burton?
No.
Was that still Tim Burton? It wasn't.
No.
Okay. No, Schumacher, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good old Joel.
You're right. That, I always forget that they did switch directors and they went to Schumacher for it. Because I always forget that it was switched to Schumacher, I always assume it was Burton, which would lend credence to my idea that it is a sequel. So that could be that makes a lot more sense. That it's a lot more difficult to perceive it as a sequel, in part because a lot of the aesthetics have changed, and it is also a different actor, and it is also a different director. So that's fair.
Yeah, you're guys. I really did enjoy the whole conversation that y'all had, especially you guys touching on Doctor Who and Star Trek. I like that you brought that up.
Oh, the time travel stuff. Yeah,
that's
fair.
And you mentioned like the Voyage Home, like the one with the whales, and them using that.
That's a band reference because little, very very tiny background. I was part of a fraternity as an undergrad. A musical fraternity, and one of the families within that fraternity, Bigs, Littles, and all that stuff, they were based off of Star Trek. And so one of the group's favorite movies was, Voyage Home, but they always referred to it as the one with the whales, in part because, if you know, you know. So I always forget the name of the movie. I always know it's the fourth one, sure. But if you were to ask me, like, right off the street without any sort of preamble, like what it's called, I would always say without a doubt the one with the whales, because that was what was ingrained in my mind, because leading up to that point I never watched Star Trek.
Well, you're not alone. I mean, even a lot of Star Trek fans, that's how they'll refer to it.
Oh, so, really? Yeah. Okay, so then it wasn't like just a localized thing.
Correct.
That's just a lot of people would refer to it as such. Okay.
Or
the nuclear vessels.
Yeah. So that's
the only other reference.
You're not alone there. The only thing I thought was kind of cool is you're referencing them the way they traveled in time, use the slingshot with the sun and all that. That actually didn't originate in the film.
No, it was an episode. There was at least one or two episodes from the original series that utilized the gravitational slingshot, which that one also I did a little research into as well, because they had received transmissions from a ship that was about to go, or that had already gone forward in time, right? If I recall correctly. It's a trope that a lot of science fiction has utilized since that episode came out, because it was such a riveting storyline, where they get a transmission, they're like, oh no, they found it dead, and then they meet the ship before it does the slingshot, and they die, right? Is that was the plot, if I recall correctly?
Yeah.
As in they meet a derelict ship and like, oh no, how did this happen?
Right.
And then they meet the ship before it goes back in time. They're like, wait, no, don't. And then they have that conversation about time travel.
Yeah, it's I love all that kind of stuff, and it's always so interesting to see the way different genres do it. That's why I loved, time is, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, all that jazz, because it's I love the hand waving of it, because like you guys were talking about last week, it's like, just don't try to tell me how you've done it. Just, I'm already buying the premise of like aliens and starships and time travel. So,
it's why I'm here.
Yeah. It's like, you've already got me. So don't try to explain it to the point where now I'm like questioning it, where I'm like, oh, well, hold on. Now I'm getting pulled out of this. It's like, no, I'm on board. Just just tell me it's happened. Give me the faintest veneer of a reason and let's move on.
So with that in mind, and with your, because I wanted to ask Shane this last week, but with you and your, really good, I won't say encyclopedic, though correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, cool. With your almost encyclopedic knowledge of Star Trek, what is your opinion on inertial dampeners? Do you know that story with Star Trek?
Well, I'm aware of inertial. What story, though? What are you referring to?
So the idea was that so if you look at the first, I think maybe season or two of the original series, and actual viewers of the show can correct me in the comments, engage, all that stuff. They never explained initially why they were able to come out of near light speed or light speed almost immediately. And so a lot of people would write to the show saying, why weren't they just, splatters on the windshield? And instead of just saying, because fuck you, that's why, some of the writers of Star Trek were like, well, they have inertial dampeners, and that's why they're able to come out of a light speed and, come to a halt real quick. And that's why, because they had this cool physical concept, technobabble, as you will.
Right.
And so I just wanted to know your opinions on if that makes sense to try and explain it that way, or just say, it's a show, shut up and enjoy it.
Well, no, I wasn't aware that there had been like a write-in, issue with that. Although it's not surprising, but no, I think that's a great reason, because like that is what I was just saying. That is that thin veneer of give me a reason why, like a thin veneer why, and let me just move on. I don't need to get into the weeds. You don't have to tell me the technical details behind it and how exactly it does what you're saying it does. Somebody's asked a question. You've answered the question. Sounds legit. Like it's plausible enough where I'm like, okay, I'm on board. And now we can just move on. And that I'm good with that.
Yeah. Because and you kind of bring up a good point that like kind of tickled something in my brain, my neurospicy brain as it were. When you watch something, when you voluntarily watch something,
as opposed to involuntarily, when they tie me down to the chair and do the whole, the eyes spreading open. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Clockwork Orange of it. When you voluntarily watch something, you are already trying to engage with it. And this is me just dipping into my knowledge of not necessarily fan fiction, but fan works and engagement with the medium as a whole. When you agree to watch something and voluntarily watch it, you already are signing up, almost writing a contract, as it were, that you are trying to engage with this medium or this story, this fiction, as whatever. Star Trek, they're in a ship. They're going to go faster than the speed of light, or else you're going to be watching them just traveling for 6 years before they get to the nearest sun.
Of course.
Right? There's
same thing like beaming down. Like I need, I'm on board with that, because I don't want to spend every episode seeing them get into a shuttlecraft and driving the shuttlecraft down and all that. Let's just get there,
Exactly. Right. There's things that you are willing to just not think about just to progress the plot. It's almost like if you, I don't know if you had ever played the original Mass Effect or something similar, but every time you travel to another planet, there would be a loading screen where you're flying to this planet. If you were getting into the Land Rover that would travel around the planets that you didn't necessarily interacted with as your character, but just as the Land Rover, you would always have the Land Rover leave the ship and land on the ground as a loading screen. And like, you don't want to see that in a show. Like, granted, this is a little different for video games because you do need loading screens, and most people would rather see, the ship coming, or the Land Rover of sorts, the Mako, for those that do know what that is, coming out of the ship and landing, because you'd rather stare at that than a blank screen while you see the loading, right? But for a show, you don't need to load it. It's already produced, it's already airing, right. It's already being broadcast, right? So you don't need to see these little things where it's like they're time filler of sorts, right? So you can always engage with the people enjoying the media in that way. Like, we have teleporters. And yes, it is a fun exercise to be like, well, what happens when you teleport? What happens when you're traveling that? But that's something that is you engaging with the medium, not necessarily asking them, like writing to the the producers, the writers, and saying, well, what happens to their bodies when they teleport?
But that dialogue can be good. Some of that back and forth. Because it like I was saying, I want enough of an explanation where it seems plausible so it doesn't feel like you're insulting my intelligence. But I also don't need you to get so into the weeds of it that either A, as potentially a casual viewer, my eyes are glazing over because now this is just too in the weeds and I don't care. Or B, as maybe a non-casual viewer, somebody that's heavily into it, now you've given me too much information where I'm like, well, this doesn't make any damn sense because because of X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
You've given me too much detail, so now I know you're wrong. But that dialogue of not just me engaging in a one-way communication with the show, but actually be it writing letters in or hopping on social media and having that feedback is good too, because it spawns some new creative paths, right? So to the point of the transporter, right? They've gave a kind of a brief understanding of what it was, but then that brief understanding and the questions that might go along there with can result in some really great storylines for things that happen, right? Like you've got like a Voyager there with Tuvix, through the transporter, kind of like the two people getting merged into one through the transporter. You've got Scotty showing up on Next Generation because he's just been stuck in a transporter buffer because he realized he was going to die potentially, and so the way he was able to preserve himself was keep his pattern in the buffer. And that sort of thing, then you can have like these really cool stories. And
but even then, you're not just explaining, you're not just doing exposition, you are telling these, this cool, science facts, if you will, in a way that still is leading to stories or engaging with this medium in the way of like, well, I could just sit here for 15 minutes and explain to you the intricacies of quantum teleportation and throw quantum into a couple more, words where you quantumly touch the quantum computer and you quantumly your quantum atoms are quantum disassembled and quantumly teleported.
That's right. And then at the tail end of that, you do a giant quantum leap. Good
reference. Right. Like you could do that, but no one is interested in that. It's more of a show, not tell, right? There is some interesting things that could happen, especially when you give a little bit of information almost as a teaser of sorts where, your atoms are deconstructed and copied and teleported down to the surface. Okay, well, what happens to the original ones? Well, what happens if the teleporter goes wrong and instead of you getting disassembled, there are other atoms that are sent down to the surface, but you're still there too. So what happens in that? That's still exploring,
Well, that exact thing has been brought up. That's how you end up with two Rikers.
That's what I'm saying. That is an interesting exploration of what is going on. You're still learning more about how teleporters work, but you're not just like, well, here's a 15-minute lecture, right? Let me write down on a board. I'll just pull up the whiteboard over here and I'll just start writing things down. Like, here's the equation here's the physical, phenomena that is utilized when you're teleporting and stuff. If people want that sort of thing, they can read layman's books on physics. Or if you really hate yourself, you can look at textbooks on physics and try and understand it that way. But people want to be entertained. And that's why coming back to us as well as a podcast, that's why we don't just sit here and be like, well, in 1943, 10 British people invaded Norway with the express, goal of destroying the one heavy water facility that they were using for Germany's nuclear arms program.
Little did they know Smedley Butler was there to kick their ass.
See, that actually would have been cool. Smedley Butler was part of that operation in World War II. But
that's right. 10 British, not enough, even if they were on horseback.
Just send Smedley Butler in. It doesn't matter. He can lose another continent off his chest. It's fine. But like that is a lot more interesting to engage with. When people want a story, they want to feel like they're engaging, that they're trying to interact with the story. That's why video games are so popular, because instead of just like being told something, you can interact with it. That's also why some stories, like what makes a good story or a book or not, is whether or not you can engage with it in some way, whether or not you are left thinking when you put the book down, right? If you're just being told everything that's going on, like a textbook, In my 13 years of college, and yes, I'm throwing that number out there. In my years of college, I have never put down a textbook and like, man, that was a good read. What about this?
Did you never take history classes? I used to love my history textbooks.
Well, and even then, you're still thinking about, okay, that's not the point I was trying to make, but fine, you made a good point, but even then you're still thinking about, like, it's still engaging with it in a certain way. Yeah, I bet there's people that have put down a physics textbook or a chemistry textbook, and it's like, well, what if I did this? What happens if this happens? What happens if this? And there is a way to engage with it. That isn't necessarily the point that I'm making. But now that you brought up that point, I realized that the whole point I was trying to make was kind of thrown out the window.
You know what? I think just in terms of college textbooks and stuff, and then in terms of what you're saying about engaging, I think, and there could be money in this, we could figure out a way to monetize this. What if we could come up with a way of doing a choose your own adventure, but for like the textbooks and stuff, like,
okay, I'm going to let you cook. I want to hear this.
Oh, I'm just curious. Like, okay, like, Germany has invaded Poland. Turn to page 47 if you think America should whatever, and turn to page 92 if like those old choose your own adventure, and then you got to flip around in the books, and then you just started World War III.
Oh my God. The only point that I would say to that is, if they choose, like, you would still need alternate history, unless, and I'm thinking about this, you could either, because now you got my brain a-going, you got the neurospiciness activated, right? It's going to be spicy in here. There's some jalapenos flying around. What if instead, like, you had, what happened? So Germany and this other, like, Poland have beef with each other, right? Turn to page, X if you think they're going to go this way, and it's actually an entirely different period in history.
Well, so it could be that, but I would say you don't need the alternate history. I think you could stick in the present.
That's what I'm saying.
No, but I'm saying you don't even have to jump to a previous history era, right? If you're trying to teach 20th century world history as an example, right? What I'm saying is, like, okay, so like we're looking at Germany and Poland as an example, and Germany's invaded. Turn to page 47 if you think the Polish should, whatever, like hop on horseback and go attack the tanks. Turn to page 92 if they should do something else. And then when you,
okay, it's different facets of what happened. It's still the same story. It's just you're actively engaging the reader with how they want to experience the story that unfolded.
Exactly.
Yes,
and then
the cavalry charge, the last, the last of the winged hussars charging the tanks. If they were interested in that, sure. If they were interested in the more blitzkrieg of it,
yeah, and you could set it up in a way in which you engage people of different interests as well. So if somebody's more of a geopolitical student and not so much a particularly European history, you could end up having it so these choices could now jump us as you work your way through the thread, have us jump now and leave Poland and Germany just through the threads they've taken. So now we're finding out what's going on in Switzerland or whatever, because that could be one of the options of it's somewhere along the line. So as they do the if then, we could end up working our way to what's happening in Ethiopia during this time period or whatever, right? But let the students funnel themselves there through their own interest and how they're choosing to answer some of this stuff. And the cool thing with this would also be you'd get very much like if you're anything like I was as a kid with the choose your own scares and choose your own adventures, you'd get these students that would be like, okay, that was pretty interesting, but I got to backtrack and I got to what happens if I had done this instead? And then now they're scouring back 10 steps, in the if then process to go back and be like, I really debated about which one to go down there. If I went down this other one, where would that take me? Right. And then ultimately, very much like a lot of these choose your own adventures did, there are multiple paths to get to the same end point, right? In a lot of that. And that would be sort of the same way here in terms of the multiple paths would have either trail out and lead to a dead end, or result in them all kind of coming to this general conclusion of World War II ends, and as we know it, the world progresses. But yeah, I'm just thinking.
No, I like that, especially because it engages with the student, which is in order for people to learn, what's going on, like you have to be able to engage with the reader. That's why we can make references to a movie that I haven't seen in over 10 years, the one with the whales, and that sort of thing, because I engaged with it. I enjoyed it. I remember that a lot more than the couple of scientific papers that I read earlier today. Right, because I was able to engage with it. That is a good idea and a good way to have people learn stuff for school or for enjoyment, right? Because it also engages with the student or with the person, the person engaging with the medium. It has them engage with it in their own way that they learn, because there's multiple different ways to learn. I'm not going to get into the weeds of it or the specifics of it, because a lot of that is still up for debate. It's not necessarily the most scientific in some regards, because it all depends, like, well, what's your personality, or how are you tactile, that sort of thing. But like, the most basic thing I will say is that people learn differently depending on their mindset, which is probably the safest, assertion to make. But it's not wrong. Like, you and, the next person, the person sitting next to you in class, the person sitting on every single dimension in class, every single direction, they're all going to learn differently. And so by having these sort of choose your own adventures, choose your own way to engage with this sort of historical context, or even you can do that with the sciences, because
for sure,
you can, you can explore, like, you start with, say, velocity. And then you can either dovetail into something like energy, which is related, or impulse, which is related, or even electromagnetism, which is also related to velocity, and just
and
make your way.
Great ones with like biology and evolution, and like going down the different paths of like there are ways to change how things are taught. Through the literary medium, to help engage with people and make them more interesting. Oh, I'm smelling money here, Michael. The Disinformed Podcast presents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let me add an extra 6 hours to the day so that I have time to start that project. But no, it's still a good point, and this is something I've talked about before. I'm not going to go on to a whole education rant, because people know that I've done this many times before. I was trying to remember who the deity of this flying spaghetti monster. Satan knows. I'll go with Satan. Satan knows I've done that plenty of times. But like, it's all about trying to get education is fundamentally not how education is taught in the United States is not good. It's outdated by at least a couple hundred years, because the whole point in at least the mass education that we've experienced, you and I, as millennials, was all about, like, here, you need to understand how to write a check, and you need to understand how to read and do basic arithmetic, so you can go off into the mine / go off into the factory and make clothes for a living for the rest of your life, right? We weren't taught on how to actually survive as adults in the modern era.
I know that I use cursive every single day. I'm so glad I wasted so many hours of my life learning cursive.
I don't know if they ever took that away in the school systems that you have been exposed to, but they actually did cut cursive out from Arizona's education system not too long after while I was in there. So that is, but also on the other hand too, they stopped teaching analog clock reading. So technically, no one in the education system now in Arizona would be taught how to read an analog clock. Do they need that? No. Is it pretty easy to understand? Yes. If you have any sort of inkling of how time operates, you could probably try and read it, right? But it's just something that, like, it's all lecture based, right? And that's not, some people learn from that, and that's great for those people. Like, it's fantastic. But for most of us people that fall asleep within 5 minutes of a lecture because they have ADHD, I'm not naming names myself, but for just lecture-based things, it's not as engaging for most people. Like, in order to get around that issue that I might or might not have had as an undergrad in college, I wrote down everything that was there. And I did that for every single class. Is it useful? No. Do I have a boatload of notebooks that I have to throw away periodically because I'm taking up a whole bookcase of them? Yes. Because I just had to write it down.
Man. I was there. I took meticulous notes. I had tons and tons of notebooks as well. And then I had them long after I graduated because I just felt like I had invested so much energy in making them that I was like, I can't get rid of these things.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, what if you need them?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I have a little bit of a different case because I'm still in school. But even then, I was like, I haven't touched any of these. I'll pick up a binder, blow off the thick layer of dust, and be like, oh, it was from these 3 classes. I haven't opened this since I last wrote in it. I never referred to them because I'm not the person to study in that regard.
Yeah.
So, like,
it was literally the move to the States that forced my hand. Like, the unexpected situations that had me here that resulted in my, like, oh, well, I don't have a choice. I no longer have those. But I'll tell you one thing, it's been 10 years, never once missed them.
Exactly. You're like, oh man, boy, you were never like, boy, howdy, if only I had my notes from Business 202 class. Oh man, shucks, Buster, I wish I had that. Like, but you did that most likely if you were the smart, studious person that I might assume that you were. You probably referred to them and studied with them. Mm-hmm. I know I sure as hell didn't.
I had a whole at the start of every class, I'd pull out 3 different pens. I had a black, a blue, and a red. And I had like a whole system where like the main part of my note, I would be like writing in black. And then the kind of the bullet point details to it would be in blue. So I could easily just go down and be like, black is like the new heading of something. Okay, cool. And then the blue is the meat. And then if there was something particularly like within there that I needed to know, then I'd highlight or underline that in red. And so I had like a whole 3-color prawned system every class. So I was sitting there as I'm taking notes, switching pens to like write, okay, now it's in black. Okay, now it's in blue. Oh, let me grab the red because this part's important to hear. So I had a whole approach to everything. I was also like the biggest 5-star junkie, like the school supply stuff. 5-star notebooks, 5-star binders, 5-star pencil. You know, it was all the pricey stuff, but it was like really good quality stuff that like, you know, just had like all the little like almost like a James Bond gadget system here where you could just like set up stuff. So I had a whole routine there, and I was so meticulous in it. And and I remember, funny enough, different times, but I remember everybody would say back then, Michael, you write like a girl, because my writing was so neat, right?
Oh.
And so it was like, you that's what I'm saying, different times, right? But it's, you write like a girl, quote unquote, because my writing was so neat. Whereas now my writing's a mess because I don't often actually have to write anything down like physically anymore with a pen. But I was so like meticulous, like my everything had to be well written, beautifully like scribed out, different colors. My notes were the notes that everybody would come to borrow, like if they missed class. Oh, can I photocopy your notes? Such a waste of time.
Jeez.
Like,
I mean, fair. I didn't do that. I wrote with pen to force myself to write slower so that I would actually be able to read and understand my notes if I ever needed to refer to them. But I was never meticulous in that regard. I did it to keep myself awake. If I could have sat through the whole class without falling asleep, I wouldn't have taken notes.
Oh, dude, I would find a spot in the class where I would have like the spot next to me would also be free. Cause I would like every class I'd show up, cause I always had the morning classes cause I'd work in the afternoon, and I'd bring my thermos and I'd have like an herbal like blueberry tea or some sort of like mixed berry one. So I at the start of every class, I'd lay out my notebook, pull out my pens, get them all set up to start. I'd open my thermos, pour myself my tea. The steam would be coming off the little like thermos cap, to it.
God.
And I'm all set up there. Everything's, I got the notebook or the textbook open to whatever chapter we're going over that day. And I'm sitting there ready to write and sipping my tea. And I got like my little spread all around me. And then, the mad rush to quickly pack everything up when the class would end, because I had to get it all packed up so that I could make it to the next class so that I could lay it all out again.
Okay, I was going to call you a nerd and be very disparaging, but I'm also still in school, probably for the reasons why because how I studied and how I did everything. So I can't judge you in that regard, because you graduated, you have a doctor, you have 400 million jobs, and I don't. So that's because of me. So I can't judge you for it. But one thing I can judge us for is that we actually didn't technically start the episode. You did the preamble in regards to explaining how the show works, but nobody ever from the tops of the hills, cried out to the world, by the eternal. Behold.
Yeah, that's right. True. Yeah, drop the ball.
We never introduced that this was the Disinformed
Shane is
podcast.
going to be so disappointed.
And that I was Michael.
And I'm Doc.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I feel like the best way to end the episode is to actually formally start the episode. We've done that a couple of times, so it's not like we're really going off the rails here in regards to not actually formally starting an episode. And if I was motivated, I would put the intro music here.
Listen,
but we still did an intro pretty much.
I'm still hungover from the celebrations of Doc Day. Okay.
Oh God, fucking. Oh, jeez.
Did you like that I sent you the text message from my mom?
I mean, it was fantastic. Yep. She even included the video of the conception. But no, she didn't. Thank God. That would be a little too much.
You got to sign on to the OnlyFans for that one, bud.
You know what? That's fair. I'm not an OnlyFans subscriber. I'm not an OnlyFans creator. I don't deal with the social medias, regardless of what. I don't deal with it. Though, I will say, one of the last things I'll say before we start talking and getting out of here is that one of my next episodes that I'm thinking of writing is going to be dealing with social media. Because I had a thought as to how I want to structure another episode, and I'm kind of excited for it.
Are you on
but
Threads
I'm not gonna. No. Though based off of a tweet that I saw earlier today, not many people are. It was a big old fad.
Yeah, I did sign up for it day before yesterday or whatever, just because I've never had like a Twitter, so I thought, well,
that's fair.
So I was like, well, if this is the new Twitter, let me check it out. I also listened to an episode of Today Explained. I think it's like NPR related.
Fair.
But they did a little thing on Threads, and so I listened to that, which then inspired me to go download the app. And then what's humorous about it is the guy on it, because they were talking about, it was a quality app, and he said, the algorithm's kind of like not so great at showing you what it thinks you want to see, but it's stuff. And then he referenced somebody, I can't even remember who, but like some thing on the app. He's like, as an example, I would say 40% of my thread feed is this, whatever the thing is named. And he's like, and I don't know what that is, who that is. The posts aren't funny. Like, I don't want to see that stuff, but it keeps showing me it. So the reason why I mention this is, and I don't remember the stupid thing's name now, but so I signed up for Thread. And I'm like, okay, well, let me check it out here and see what the new Twitter 2.0 is. And the thing that the guy had been talking about is showing up in my news feed. And I'm like, he's like, the thing the guy was complaining about is in my thread feed. And I'm like, he's right. These aren't funny jokes. Why am I seeing this? But it was just very humorous because I'm like, this is literally the thing the guy was complaining about.
So it was like a comedian of sorts, or was it just...
Yeah, like a comedian or maybe a company that posts joke meme or like jokes and stuff.
Like Wendy's or something. Like, man, if it was like an actual like business account, like that they used to do that on Twitter. They might still do it now, but I don't follow anyone that follows them. But like that was a thing for a while. Is that like what was it? Candy bar companies and fast food companies would talk to each other. Like the most recent one I remembered was during the Grimace birthday. Grimace, air quotes, took over the McDonald's app, and he would just post random stuff about wanting chicken nuggets and stuff. And I know that was really big on Threads, that like a lot of corporate accounts started just posting massively over there, like Arby's and whatnot.
Yeah, suffice to say, I hopped on it. I didn't actually create a thread myself. I scrolled through it for all of 2 or 3 minutes, and then the app is sat dormant since. But I did follow you, and I get the little pop-up that says like that I will automatically like be following you when you create your thread.
Oh, I was like, why? How are you following me? I didn't create a thread.
Well, it's tied through Instagram.
It's through Instagram. Yeah, I forgot that I still have an Instagram. I haven't touched that since I was single, so that was years ago. It's so. Also, just so you know, because I had heard this from people on the social medias, i.e. Twitter, because that's the only thing I really do anymore. You can't delete your Threads account. It is tied, intertwined with your Instagram, as it were. So the only way you can delete your Threads is if you delete your Instagram. So
honestly, very much like Threads, except Instagram, I've had an account for, I don't know, probably close to 10 years now, but very much like Threads. My Instagram has the exact same number of posts as my Threads account has, as I have never once loaded anything to Instagram either. So I could really care less if I had to delete my Instagram account.
That's fair. Yeah. And speaking of social medias that have no engagement, as it were, we have them as a podcast. We don't really use them, but we have them, and you can follow them. We have a link tree down below that you can click and see all of our glorious things. Mainly, you can use it to connect to our YouTube if you aren't listening to us through YouTube as you are right now. And we usually do things like After Darks, which we post on Fridays because this comes out on Monday. I just had some sweat drip off my beard onto my hand. That was very disgusting. But we do the random odd thing, and if it's not this exact episode, we usually just post it on YouTube. Will there be an After Dark this week? Probably not, but we usually do one here and there. So tune in. Hit the subscribe. I'm not going to do the whole bit that I usually do whenever we do After Darks because this isn't the After Darks. But yeah, we have those socials. You should engage with us in any way, shape, or form. Leave a review. We love to hear from you. We're usually popping on your provider apps every Monday morning. And I think I covered all the little things that Shane does. So do you have any last minute things you'd like to throw in? Because I'd say we've done a pretty good episode. Not as schizophrenic as last week, which I'll admit was entirely my fault. But still, for both last week and this week, good conversations all around.
Yes, I agree. I enjoyed being a listener last week. Hopefully Shane will enjoy being a listener. I have no doubt he will shake his head and be yelling at the headphones there that you haven't introduced yourselves.
Yeah, just gesturing, Con! Instead of that, it'll be Doc! Because that rolls off the tongue better than Mike, so yeah, we'll go with that.
No, but well done, and I agree. Everybody engage. It's always nice to hear from you all, and I enjoy hopping in the comments and sparring back and forth when applicable. And then, of course, same deal. Let us know what your thoughts are on the Choose Your Own Adventure history, biology, and physics textbooks that will be coming to your university library soon.
And just so you all remember, we are the Disinformed Podcast, so take that as you will with that little tidbit of information. Yeah.
You explained the joke, Michael.
I mean, that is what I do. As I used to joke, I beat dead horses with dead horses because I don't like to leave jokes unexplained. That's just my shtick. It bothers me. It keeps me up at night when I'm either that or my own sweat.
That's right. I was going to say it keeps you up at night just lying in a puddle of your own sweat.
Honestly, I don't wish a lot of things on people I dislike, but I wouldn't wish people lying in their own sweat. It's just not something I don't want anyone to have to deal with that. I want people to be able to enjoy their rest and not feel like they went out to go swim and then jumped into bed and fell asleep. No one needs to experience that in their lives.
And with that,
yeah, I'd say that's a good thing to end on.
Yeah.
So with that, thank you for listening, and I'm Michael.
And I'm Doc. And zippity-zooper out of here.